Good morning, Professor, my classmate and junior. My name is HOANG Ngoc Minh, and today I'm gonna present about special characters of the UN Conventions on the Law of the Sea. Here's my table of content. My table of content has four parts. The first is historical perspective. The second is developing from the previous conference. The third is creating new regime. And the last one is raising new international maritime issues. As you know, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is the outcome of the third United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. It took around 10 years of negotiation and it also laid out a comprehensive regime of law in the world's ocean and sea. The UNCLOS is considered as the second most important legal instrument after World War II, only after Charter of the United Nations. The discussion of special characters of the convention is really necessary, especially when compared to the 1958 Geneva Convention on the Law of the Sea. In my presentations, I will divide it into three parts. The first is special character that's developed from the previous conference. The second is the special characters that's considered as a new regime of the UNCLOS. And the last one is the special characters that's considered as the special as a new international maritime issues. Now let's have a look briefly to historical perspective. As you know, from the 7th to middle of 20th century, the ocean has long been subject to the freedom of the sea doctrines. In the first conference, the peoples tried to codify the international customaries of the sea under the United Nations, but it failed to combine different protocols in one agreement. In the 1967, the Ovid Pardo asked the nations around the world to look around them and open their eyes to a looming conflict that could devastate the oceans, the lifeline of man's very survival. Therefore, the third conference were held in held in the New York in 1973. It ended 9 years later with the adoptions of 1982 of a constitution for the sea. It's called United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. The next part is developing from the previous conference. The first characters is territorial sea, or is called breadth of the sea. Limits of the territorial seas is considered as one of the most crucial characters of the UNCLOS. During the first and second conference, participators has different opinions on breadth of the sea. Thus, the conference failed to set a definition of the width of the sea. Until 1982, the UNCLOS official recognized right to establish the breadth of the territorial sea and set the limits to its establishment pursuant to Article 3 of the Convention. It states that a member state has right to establish the breadth of its territorial seas up to a limit not exceeding 12 nautical miles, measured from the baseline determined according with this convention. Here is a picture that describes 5 different parts belonging to sovereign right and jurisdiction of Vietnam. Here you can see that the territorial sea lies between internal water and contiguous zone, and the territorial sea wide 12 nautical miles from the baseline. Furthermore, with the appearance and adoptions of concept exclusive economic zone, the territorial sea that under sovereignty rights and jurisdictions of the countries may be up to 200 nautical miles from the baseline from which the breadth of the territorial seas is measured. On top of that, the UNCLOS comprehend the Indo-Ocean Pacific provinces by provide a series of activities that will be considered to be prejudicial to the peace, good order, or security of the coastal state if in the territorial sea is engaged in. All these activities were listed in the Article 19 of UNCLOS. The second character is about continental shelf. Before the 1982 UNCLOS, people tried to contribute and define the continental shelf. However, in the Article 1 of 1958 Convention on the Continental Shelf, the term admit of explorations was still ambiguous, and it may cause the endless enlargement of continental area. Therefore, in order to clarify the aims of exploration, the UNCLOS comprehend the definition and determinations of continental shelf. And this provision then set the limit of the width of the continental shelf that a member is allowed to expand to. Therefore, it has been prevent a countries from unilaterally enlarge their continental shelf. Next is the special character that's considered as a new regime of the UNCLOS. The first one is Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ. EEZ is considered to be the most crucial part of the UNCLOS. Let's have a look again to this picture. In this picture, you can see that the exclusive economic zone is laid between the internal water and the high sea. The width of the exclusive economic zones is 200 nautical miles from the baseline. And this zone is cover all the territorial sea and also contiguous zone. In this zone, a coastal state, although they don't have the sovereignty, but they also still have the sovereignty right and jurisdiction. Jurisdiction pursuant to Article 56, 56 of the 56 of the UNCLOS. The EEZ is considered as a truly economic zone to a coastal state for their right to explore, exploit, develop, manage, and conserve all resources. The next character is about international seabed. Before 1970, there was no legal framework that sufficiently regulate the use of the seabed and the ocean's floor. In 1970, a declaration of principle governing the seabed and the ocean floor beyond the limit of the national jurisdictions were adopted. This zone is recognized to be the areas and its resources are the common heritage of mankind pursuant to Article 136 of the UNCLOS. The international seabed authorities were also established by the Annex 1 of the Conventions to organize and control the activities and administer the resources of the area on behalf of all humankind. The next is new regime for archipelagic state. Before 1982, there were no recognitions of a special character and consequently of a particular legal rights and obligation of archipelagic states. Archipelagic states are those states which are made up of a group or closely spaced islands such as Philippines, Indonesia, Japan, and New Zealand. The conventions contain new regime for the archipelagic stage from Article 47 to 54. For those states, the territorial seas is 12-mile zone extending from the lines joining the outermost point of the outermost islands of the group that are in close proximities to each other. The next character is about dispute settlement and ITLOS. After the first conference, after the first conference, about 36 members joined and agreed to be bound by the optional protocol of signature concerning the compulsory settlement of dispute. However, the protocols were only the optional choice. It means that party could be decide by themselves to be bound by the protocol or not, by accepting or not accepting the protocol. Therefore, it was not the best way to settle when there were a dispute after member. Therefore, the UNCLOS finally introduced the mechanism for dispute settlement and made it obligatory for the party. However, there is only exceptions to the provisions. It's made for sensitive case involving national sovereignty. The next is part 4, raising new international maritime issues. The next character is protection of maritime environment. Here are 6 main sources from of the ocean pollution that I mentioned, that I list on the slide. The convention laid out the fundamental obligations of all states to protect and preserve the marine environment. It also further urged all states to cooperate on global and regional basis in formulating rules and standards and otherwise take measures for the same purpose. All states also have to conduct all measures that are necessary to prevent, reduce, and control pollutions of the marine environment. The last one is maritime scientific research. Here's new rules are introduced on marine scientific research. As you know, the coastal state jurisdiction within its territorial seas remain absolute. However, within the EEZs and in case involving research on the continental shelf, the coastal state must give the priority consent for research. It has to serve the peaceful purpose and is to be granted in normal circumstances and shall not be delayed or denied unreasonably. The research here must follow 5 general principles that's listed in Article 214 of UNCLOS. In conclusions, you can see that the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas is one of the most important international treaties in the history of international law. In this convention, existing provisions are developed and improved, new provisions are created. It transforms customary law into international treaty, making it one of the most important sources of the international law. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention.